Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. After 14 years of waiting, First Nations children caught in the child welfare system are going to continue to wait for compensation. Late this afternoon, the Trudeau government appealed to federal court on a landmark Canadian Human Rights Tribunal decision. In 2019, the tribunal ordered Ottawa to compensate children and families $40,000 each because the federal government willfully discriminated against them by underfunding the on-reserve child welfare system. The newly re-elected Liberal government says children should be compensated, but they have decided to once again challenge the way that it should be done. Crown Indigenous Minister Mark Miller and Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu are holding a press conference just now, saying the appeal is a protective one which will give the parties more time to negotiate an agreement. Well, for more on this, we're joined now by Cindy Blackstock. Cindy, good as always to see you. The Justice Department waited until the last minute but decided to appeal the compensation order. How disappointed are you?
I'm really disappointed. You know, I've always felt like this case is about ending discrimination against kids and trying to make some reparations for the victims that were hurt. And it's now been going on for like 15 years. So it's disturbing to see that the federal government is not yet fully able to kind of put down its sword of litigation against First Nations children. But on the positive side, I'm hoping that we now have from the public pressure a moment where the federal government will really focus on ending the racial discrimination that kids and families are continuing to experience, so that we don't have any more victims in the future, that we finally have a generation that's treated fairly.
I got to say, I can't think of a time there was this much public awareness around a decision. The government says they still want to negotiate a deal and give children and their families fair compensation. What does that tell you?
Well, for me, there is no negotiation below these federal court orders, and I'll tell you why. It's because the federal court order is recognizing that the victims were the children and the families that were denied the fairness and services. It's not my money. It's not anybody else's money. It belongs to them, and it's for the harms that they suffered. So we don't ever find ourselves in a position where we would consent to either reducing that amount under any circumstances or agreeing that some people should be out when they're now eligible. That's not our decision to make. We don't have authority to make that decision, and we will therefore be defending those orders in every forum.
Cindy, as you mentioned, been nearly 15 years. Just for myself, that's almost half my own life. How much longer do you think families are going to have to wait for a resolution to be compensated?
You know, the good news is it's right in the Prime Minister's hands. So there's a tribunal order that says that once the litigation stops, within 10 days, there will be a meeting where we press the start button on the process to distribute the funds. That doesn't mean 10 days after the decision the checks will roll out, but we'll hire the company that will then do that work. And that will provide some comfort and certainty to families when that happens. So we just need the litigation to stop.
At the end of the day, Cindy, how much do you think $40,000 will go, or any amount for that matter, to making up for what these children and their families have been going through?
It'll never be enough. I mean, I just look at the residential school survivors, the 60 Scoop survivors, the day school scholars, and you know, you can never recover your childhood, and you can never recover those sacred moments with your family. But for some of these young people who have been formerly in care, we've heard, you know, this'll help me find an apartment in a safe neighborhood, the first safe, stable house I'd ever have in my life. Or I'll be able to reconnect with my community for the first time. Or I will be able to pay for my education or my trades program. And we've even heard from parents who have lost children who sadly were denied services under Jordan's principle. And some of those parents are thinking, well, we want to build a play park to honor our child, but so that other children have some of the help that my child never received. So these families and these children, they have plans to be able to make their own lives better and their other people's lives better. And that's why it's so important that the litigation stops and that the families and the victims finally get the compensation they deserve, plus other supports.
Now, Cindy, I understand that there is one order that the federal government won't be appealing. What can you tell us about that?
Right. So one of the orders that the government did appeal in federal court and lost was with regard to First Nations family or First Nations children off reserve who are recognized by their nations getting help under Jordan's Principle. The government was challenging an order that made that so. Thankfully, the federal court ruled against them and said, no, you've got to make sure that First Nations children, all First Nations children, whether they have status or not, who are recognized by their nation are helped under Jordan's Principle. So the federal court affirmed that, and the federal government has chosen not to appeal it, which means that First Nations children recognized by their nation, regardless of status off reserve, are now eligible for Jordan's Principle this year and next year, and you don't have to worry about your services being cut.
Some good news indeed. Well, Cindy, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate it as always you taking some time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Take good care.
In other news, a Wet'suwet'en Hereditary chief was one of two people arrested in a pipeline dispute in northern British Columbia this week. Coastal GasLink has an injunction to build a natural gas pipeline. Wet'suwet'en Hereditary chiefs vowed not to let that happen and have set up blockades. According to a press release from Lac Samasu clan, after being allowed into the territory by Coastal GasLink, they blockaded the logging road near Houston, BC for 4 days. An RCMP press release states officers were called over a group protesting outside a work camp Wednesday night. Wet'suwet'en Chief Sahel was one of two people arrested. Both have been released. The blockaded road was peacefully vacated. The Manitoba Metis Federation says they are taking legal action after what they call an unlawful arrest of a minor and harassment of an elder. MMF President David Chartrand says members of his group had their rights violated. He says a 16-year-old and his father were arrested for moose hunting in Duck Mountain Provincial Park. But Chartrand said Canada's Charter of Rights allows them to hunt. He plans to file a human rights complaint. The RCMP says the arrests were conducted on behalf of the province. APTN did not hear back from the province on our request for comment. 82-year-old George Lavalley is a Métis elder. He says while hunting in Duck Mountain earlier this year, he was issued a warning from conservation officers. He says his experience was emotional and upsetting.
When you get to a point like this where your rights are taken away, your dignity is shocked. You don't know what to think. What are they doing to us? What rights have they got to stop me when this is my rights? This is my land. I was here. We were here before you were. This is what the government gave us. The Supreme Court allowed us this land, and now you're saying that we're trespassing? I'm not trespassing. You are.
A delegation from the Assembly of First Nations is heading to Rome this December to meet with the Pope. More on that coming up after the break. Welcome back. The Pope's planned visit to Canada is bringing a range of reactions from people across the country. APTN's Leanne Sanders is in Vancouver and has more.
Residential school survivor Charlie Morrison spent 30 years on these streets, and today he's at the corner of Main and Hastings to place a teddy bear on an ever-growing memorial for the children who never came home from residential school.
I like to say, grant this toy to the kids that are missing. It's so emotional right now to say anything but thank you very much.
Morrison, who is from Kitimat, BC, was taken to the Port Alberni Residential School, along with all 7 of his siblings. He escaped after 1 year, but was forever scarred by the experience.
And I never did once deal with my residential school stuff. I didn't think it bothered me until my grandkids started talking about it.
He said there should also be a criminal investigation into what happened to the children in those schools, especially given the high numbers.
Even for one person, there should be investigated. If it was the other people, they'd investigate right now. So there's just so many people that are missing, and they're gone for so long. I don't know how they covered it up so long. I think they should.
And across the city, at the Vancouver Art Gallery, a large memorial has been set up. Angela White is the head of the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. She says news of the papal visit has created high hopes and some doubt.
In some sense, it is really about, people are really glad that he's making the effort and it's a first step. And on the other side of it, it's really clear that they're saying don't waste your time unless you're coming with actionable items and not just empty promises.
She says the discovery of the 215 children in Kamloops has re-traumatized survivors and their families.
And if he's not going to apologize, I think we honestly need to prepare not just the leadership but the survivors for what is coming, because the last thing we want is for them to be further isolated and disregarded in the lack of apology.
And how does Charlie Morrison feel about the Pope's visit to Canada?
The family from the missing people, they need some kind of closure or apology from somebody. Are they going to get an apology? But they've waited this long. They've waited this long already, and I think it'll help with their healing too. So some people.
The memorial here has been growing since the 215 children were found. Since the Pope has announced a planned visit to Canada, many survivors we spoke to are hopeful that this will be the start of real healing and reconciliation in Canada. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Thanks, Leanne. Welcome to the team. A delegation from the Assembly of First Nations will be traveling to Rome this December. They're seeking a formal apology for abuse, mistreatment, and suffering, which took place at the hands of the Roman Catholic Church in Canadian residential schools. Our reporter Charlotte Moore Jacobs has more.
One of my grandmothers spent 6 years of her life at the St. Peter's residential school in Hay River.
Norman Yakalaya will have his grandmothers in his heart when he seeks an apology from Pope Francis for Indigenous suffering from residential schools.
She was kind, and she always attended church. She told me stories about her life in the residential school. And it's amazing the power of forgiveness.
This month, Yakalaya accepted the invitation from His Holiness to travel to the Vatican. 12 AFN members and 2 support workers are going to Rome December 17th to 20th.
We have not yet heard from the Inuit or the Métis, but we are focusing on the Assembly of First Nation. That I am the regional chief portfolio holder for the residential schools, and it is my duty and responsibility to lead the delegation.
Yakalaya is also a residential school survivor and has spoken of the abuses he endured in his time at Grolier Hall and Stringer Hall in Inuvik. He says an apology would show commitment by the church to walk on the path of healing and respect Indigenous people.
When I started working on residential schools back in the late 90s, there were about 150,000 residential school survivors. Today, I'm one of them. And today we're number about 80,000. So our history is going with us.
The Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops will be footing the bill for the AFN's trip to Rome. On Wednesday, they announced Pope Francis had accepted an invitation to visit Canada.
We're very careful as to try to guess why the Pope. We can make some very good educated guess, but we got to be very careful as to, what is he going to say to us? We have to listen to him.
While the trip to the Vatican has been confirmed, no location has been released for the Canadian visit yet. The NWT was visited by Pope John Paul II in 1987. Charlotte Mort-Jacobs, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
A new episode of APTN Investigates debuts tonight right after the news. We'll speak to the reporter behind the episode after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Halloween is this Sunday, and Gail French sent in a picture of her son and his girlfriend's pumpkins, done up like Jack and Sally from The Nightmare Before Christmas. Thanks for sharing, Gail. Send in your Halloween pictures, whether it be a costume or decorations. You can email them to share@aptn.ca to be featured as our photo of the day. Well, I'm sure it's probably going to snow here for Halloween night, but let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 13 in Halifax and Fredericton. Sunny and 8 in Kuujjuaq. A sunny high of 9 in Nain. 11 for Montreal, 9 in Chibougamau. 11 and cloudy for Sault Ste. Marie, showers in 12 in North Bay. Showers in 11 in Thunder Bay, rain and 10 for Sioux Lookout. 8 in God's Lake, 8 in Norway House, but with showers. 11 for Winnipeg and Gimli, chance of snow and 5 in Dauphin. 16 for Regina, 8 in Saskatoon. 2 with snow in Uranium City, 1 and flurries in Stony Rapids. In northern Alberta, 4 with showers in Fort McMurray, sunny and 3 in Grand Prairie. Plus 5 with sunny skies in Edmonton, 2 for Lethbridge. Sunny and 11 in Vancouver, showers and 12 for Victoria. Plus 2 with rain in Prince George, minus 1 in Dease Lake. 11 below for Old Crow, plus 4 in Whitehorse. Minus 4 with snow for Yellowknife, 3 below in Norman Wells. Minus 3 with snow for Sax Harbor and Pawlatuck. Minus 2 and snow for Baker Lake, Chesterfield, and Whale Cove. 14 below in Resolute, 11 below in Joe Haven. Governor General Mary May Simon was in Germany recently for her first official state visit, and APTN News had the opportunity to attend the famous Frankfurt Book Fair tour, where Canada was the guest of honor. Books aside, attendees were able to take in a little taste of some Canadian Indigenous culture. APTN's Tamara Pimentel and Lindsay Richardson have this story for us now.
Canada was the guest of honor at the Frankfurt Book Fair, and it was the sights and sounds of Indigenous performers that represented the nation.
I offer a lot of variety in my performance. So I share stories, and I even share some of my music, which is electronic style dance music.
World famous Dallas Arcand brought the tradition of Cree hoop dancing from Alberta to the international stage in regalia that's been built upon over the span of 10 years.
The beadwork was actually a rescue because a lot of our beadwork ends up in pawn shops. So I found the whole set in a pawn shop, and it turns out that it was a friend of mine's late father's beadwork. So every part kind of has a story, and then even this piece I found in a pawn shop in Wetaskiwin.
Inuk soprano Diantha Edmonds' performance showcases Nunatsiavut heritage.
Classical music has been in Labrador for 250 years. And so this is something that not everybody knows. It's something I'm really proud of, and I like to share it as far and wide as I possibly can.
As far as Germany, where opera is prominent while wearing caribou fur and antler.
felt really good to sing wearing it. I honestly felt, I felt grounded, and I felt like my ancestors were with me.
That's what I want you guys to sing. Got that? No problem?
Cree Métis singer-songwriter Isquay engaged with her German audience.
What we're doing is we're inviting the spirits in with us here today to come and help heal the people. Being able to connect through song, through that, that place of spirit, I think is a nice way for us to find each other.
While wearing the symbolic red dress.
Lyrics aren't about pain. It's about, from the side of healing, right? So yes, there's when we heal from something, there's this element of what was uncomfortable or painful or whatever it might be. But the focus is on the healing element, not the painful element.
For these artists, the regalia, the performances, it represents not only Canada, but Indigenous resiliency.
When people ask me how did I get here and how did I get to the book fair or how did I get to Germany, I just tell them that it's divine timing. It's I'm meant to be here. This is where I'm at in my journey and my path. And when I'm getting a standing ovation while I'm performing, I think I'm just doing my job. Res life can be tough, and I'm not just a city native. Like I've lived both worlds, so I know how far behind things are in the res. But we just gotta not give up, keep making progress, and keep looking forward to the future.
Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Frankfurt, Germany.
On tonight's APTN Investigates, reporter Christopher Reed looks into what some are saying amounts to voter suppression in First Nations communities. Christopher visited Kenora, Ontario, and joins us now. Christopher, thanks for being with us. Can you tell us what happened in the Kenora riding?
Well, the main thing that happened is 3 fly-in First Nations ended up without polling stations on Election Day. I'm talking about Poplar Hill, Pikangikum, and Cat Lake. And this ostensibly happened because these communities were provided advance polling. However, Elections Canada says the communities should have been given polling stations on Election Day as well. In our show, we speak with Tanya Cameron, who is NDP's Indigenous Get Out the Vote coordinator for Kenora. And she was watching the election closely. And so she wrote to the chief electoral officer after the election. She compiled a report wherein she lists various other service gaps and failures that she was aware of. She also makes a pitch. She'd like to be the next returning officer for Kenora, and she feels she can do better than the last person who did it.
So what is Elections Canada doing about this?
Well, we speak with them as well. They are investigating. They had a meeting with Tanya Cameron earlier this week about suggestions she made on how to do better. They say mistakes were made, and they say they will have a public report on this soon.
Well, interesting. Looking forward to seeing this. Not the first time there's been election issues in the Kenora riding. Christopher, thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.
And Disenfranchised, Christopher Reed's episode of APTN Investigates airs tonight, right after the news, which is just seconds away from now. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Friday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for being with us. APTN Investigates is next. Have a great night.